Okay, in this tutorial I'm going to show you another way you can create bevel text in Adobe Illustrator. Not one of my favorites even back in the day when I was taught this, because it's just really a lot of kind of work in my opinion, and thankfully Illustrator's got the 3D tool now that makes it a little easier, but you know, it can still be done. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my text, and I got to set it to outline, so I create it to outlines. And then I've got to ungroup it, because you're going to use the Pathfinder palette, and you're going to use your layers, and the Pathfinder palette trick isn't going to work unless it's ungrouped. So we'll ungroup it. And I've adjusted my text and everything so they're not touching and stuff like that, so it'll be easier to see the bevel effect. So now with these guys selected, I'm gonna set like a darker stroke around them, as you can see, and we're gonna round that stroke off, and I'm gonna set it to the outside, and we're gonna make it a little thick so we can kind of see it like so. Then I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste it in place. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create first my shadow effect, the shadow of my bevel. So I'm going to offset my text. So I'm going to push it upwards. You can kind of see that I'm seeing the fill, so we're going to drop it down a little bit and over a little bit. But ideally, you want it really kind of smooth, so it looks like you're creating this kind of depth. But what I'm going to wind up doing, and since I ungrouped everything, is now I'm going to select these guys. I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool. I'm going to minus the front. And then I'm just going to make it my fill. So we're going to swap out my fill color and just make it all that one shape. So again, I'm going to select them, minus the front, and I'm going to change my fill color to where it's all the same color. That's kind of important because you may have to adjust these later, dropping the strokes off of them, so or dropping the strokes lower. So it's kind of important to not expand their appearance or anything like that. All right. So I've got my shadow, so we'll say this is the shadow bevel. And I'm going to lock it because I don't want to move it or anything or adjust it just yet. And create a layer right above it. And that's going to be my actual text itself. So whatever I just copied, we're going to paste it again in place. And I'm going to take the stroke off of it. And you can see how it's starting to kind of create that effect and of my bevel. And then now I'm going to create my highlight. So we're going to lock this layer. I'm going to create a new layer above it. Again, I'm going to paste in place. And just kind of show you, we'll turn that shadow layer off. I'm going to have to paste another layer in place as well. So, and then offset it. So I'm going to paste in place, and instead of going down and over, I'm going to go up and over. So we'll go up and to the left. So again, I'm kind of creating the exact opposite of what I did with the shadow layer. And select him, minus the front, and I'm going to make the stroke a lighter orange. So, and we're going to make it a little lighter than that, so because it really has to be a highlight here. So we'll just set it at 35 and 35 so it's easy to remember. I'm going to take that stroke color and drag it into my palette, and so that way I can make my fill the same. Minus out the front. Turn my fill and my stroke to the same. Highlight color. Minus out the front. Again, stroke. stroke, whoops. And then minus out the front. Fill, and stroke. And so now when I unlock my other layers, because I may have to go in and edit. So now when I turn things in, I might take that middle layer and darken them up a little bit. Making that fill there. Just a little darker so I can kind of see the effect show up. And this is kind of what I was talking about, is that it always is done this, that it makes this weird kind of look to it, where it's not really all of complete. And so I may have to go into this layer and drop that stroke down a little bit. Go back up to 2. With it all grouped like that, that way I can bring that stroke down a little bit. Okay, and I should have another stroke effect in there, and I might take that shadow one and select everything and drop him down just a little bit, and might drop that stroke down a little bit and just kind of adjust him like so. Alright, and so now it's kind of starting to form something, and so it winds up, it's just, this method just winds up having a lot of tweaks that you have to do to it. You know, I may have to create another layer that, again, that's offset, so it's up at the top, so I can create kind of a mid-tone. But let's just go ahead and just select these guys, and I'll put the stroke. I'll put a stroke around him, so it closes it out just a little bit. Set it to round and set it to outside as well, and that kind of closes it a little bit up at the top. Whoops. And I might make him just a point thicker, yeah, and that winds up working out a little bit better. And then I'll lock him out and turn on my highlight layer, and I might take my highlight layer and I might thicken the stroke just a little bit. Take a look at that. It's a little too thick, but we might make that layer just a little bit lighter. Drag him in there instead, and that way it's a little lighter contrast wise. And I'm gonna lock him again, and I'm gonna unlock my shadow layer, and then I shouldn't really have some of these guys in there, so I'm gonna take my selection tool, or rather my direct select tool, and select these guys, delete it, and select these guys. Whoops. Yeah, him, because I shouldn't have shadows under where the highlights are. And it just starts, you know, kind of shaping it up a little bit more. So like, and I'll do the same thing where if the highlights are hitting here and here and then here, then I would have shadow here, here, and probably wouldn't have it here. Or wouldn't have as much. And then you just kind of keep tweaking it. So, you know, ideally, you know, shadows would be on one side, highlights on the other. So, you know, same kind of concept. I have a highlight here, then I would have shadow here. So let's unlock my highlight layer, and let's delete him out. And it's just, Yeah, it's a way to do it. It's just a lot more work, in my opinion, and always has been. But it gives you really have to kind of pay attention to how you have your layers organized, and how you offset, and how you set your strokes and stuff like that. So yeah, so this is a third way that you can create bevel text effects in Adobe Illustrator.